Today is a story of discipline, overcoming something as difficult as cancer, and ultimately living a life of fulfillment. Let's go. What is up? Welcome back to the Weekly Intention, where we give you the insights to unlock your full potential. I am super pumped about today's interview, but before I get into that, I ask you one thing. If this helps you in any way, like it, share it, get it out to people. My ultimate goal with this is to be a light for people in their lives, and the best way that I can do that is obviously people seeing it. So let's share it. With that being said, let's get into the message today. The man next to me has done a lot of things. He's an IFBB Pro bodybuilder. He has a very successful online coaching and consulting business. He is a Phorm Athlete, which is a brand that I very much so respect. And, you know, what I think is most incredible about him is he's a cancer survivor and kind of his story of how he's overcome that. So I think he's got a very disciplined mindset, and today's going to show you, really how to keep moving forward, even in the midst of something that could be as terrible as cancer in your life. So with all of that being said, Justin, thanks so much for being here, brother. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me, man. I'm excited to share my story and see if it can connect with other people and just, dive into it.
Let's get it right into it. I'm sure if you can, tell just by looking to that guy. I go to the gym every day. This guy goes to the gym every day, but he's a freaking monster. He's a huge dude. And I think that's just a testament to the decade plus of consistent work he's put into fitness and, everything that he's done with that. And I think that's a really great place for us to kind of start this journey, is talking about fitness. We talked about, you obviously started lifting in the 10th grade in high school, and how it really became competitive for you when you were in college. I think it was sophomore year you did your first competition. When did you kind of realize that this was something that you wanted to do competitively, and why?
Yeah. So like you said, started in 10th grade. Basically, I come from a background of trying is basically what I would say. Like, I always tried to do sports. I played sports at the recreational level. I was never gifted with a lot of athletic talent. So in 10th grade, I just took a fitness, like the PE class, like the workout class. Basically, I was like, oh, cool. It's an easy A. I wanted to work out, do something, kind of hang out with the jocks. I was always kind of like a pseudo jock in the sense of I hung out with the jocks, but I never really hung out with the jocks, and I never really fit in because I was just like, oh, I want to be them. So I started training, working out, fell in love with it. And it was kind of one of those things that for the first time, I was like, oh, I actually can see improvements. I actually got good at it. It wasn't like where I had to have this, natural athletic talent on the football field. I still played football. I played baseball. I played basketball. Just wasn't that great. And so, I started lifting in 10th grade and just fell in love with it. A large part was I wasn't always this big, obviously. I
Didn't wake up that way.
I wish, man. There was some high schoolers like that, but no, for me, I was quite the opposite. I remember my 16th driver's license, 16 years old. My driver's license, I was 133 pounds, 5'10" at the time, 6'1" now. So cheers to puberty a little bit. But
I'm still 5'9", so I'm still waiting for that puberty bump.
Just give it a year. Give it one more year, man. It might happen. But yeah, I started super small and I just fell in love with it. And so, I kind of stuck with it. And then, early on, I actually used to get made fun of a lot, like in junior high, for being small, for being preppy, just for kind of being that weird kid. And so I think with training, it was my way to view it as like a way to get cool, to get like athletic, to be the jock. Didn't really work out at all. Still got made fun of. Just became like the meathead, basically. But, went to college, went to the University of Kansas, and, still fell in love. I was in love with the training aspect. And so, while I was that typical college guy who was, partying and hanging out and living that freshman year, I was still training and working out in the gym. So I made some friends who were kind of gym rats, if you will. And when it came to sophomore year, we moved out of the dorms, me and my best friend since 7th grade, moved out into the dorm, and we roomed with a fellow gym rat, if you will. And at the time, he had competed in a show. And so that was like my first kind of experience of, oh, what is actually competing, right?
I think you touched on something so cool.
Yeah.
Like when you said, I was picked on a lot, I was bullied, and you kind of had like imposter syndrome. Like if somebody is as successful as you had imposter syndrome, I just want everybody to know that he didn't start that way. Like he didn't start that way feeling great. He didn't start that way like being super successful in the weightlifting. So I think that's important to note. And then another thing too, I feel like a lot of people feel like that way in high school, where you're just kind of like, you're not fitting in. And 9 times out of 10, honestly, it's the people who didn't fit in that actually are more successful in the real world. I feel like it always happens.
It really is. You always hear the people like who like they had their moment in high school and then maybe after that they didn't. And I was definitely that case in the sense of I was picked on. I just had no identity of who I was. I felt like I was just constantly trying to please, and just live to be who other people might think would be cool or give the time of day to hang out with.
Yeah, you're not like really living your authentic self, and at that point, it's like, what even is my authentic self? Like, it's hard to even know what that is. But I fully kind of feel and sympathize for you that way. But that's cool. That's at least it was a good catalyst to get you to start, whether it was healthy or not. And then you kind of saw like, oh, like the power of circle. Like this is what it's like to have a motivated group of people who also like to weightlift and like kind of elevate themselves in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I really started to kind of fall into who I was and what I wanted, towards the end of high school, but definitely as I went into college, and then starting to kind of surround myself with people that were like-minded. And I think that's just a huge takeaway in life anyway, is just surrounding yourself with people who are like-minded. Mm-hmm. But yeah, roomed with him and he started competing and he was telling me about it. And so at that point I had, trained for 4 or 5 years, and I was like, well, I kind of want to try something. I want to, dive into the competitive world, but I didn't know exactly what or when or how to approach that. Until, sophomore year, and I just decided to commit. And so I found a show that was right around my 21st birthday and began the prep. It was about a 6-month prep and started it. Yeah.
Hell yeah. I'm thinking back to college, and I'm thinking about like lifting and all of like the bros just kind of going to the gym, and it's a super fun thing. But one thing that I feel like is not very talked about, at least in my college anyways, is like the nutrition aspect of it. Like people are just kind of eating what they want. Like a lot of people are just kind of partying, and you're in college and you've got a fast metabolism. So it's like, I can eat whatever the hell I want, really. How hard was that for you at that time to dial in your nutrition? Both like, I'm on prep, I can't really drink alcohol like to that extent, and I can't really like eat any bad foods at all. And I'm 21.
It was honestly really challenging because, we were just a group of, it was 4 of us in, our first apartment outside of the dorms, living by ourselves, young, wanting to live the college life. Like we fully embraced the college life, but it was one of those things where we were so invested in like the gym and that lifestyle that, I remember before we started contest prep, we were like, we're going to do a dirty bulk, and we're eating like the most unhealthy, just like trying to gain as much weight as possible.
Big Macs, ice cream, and pizza.
Seriously, cookies, Tostino's pizza, all the unhealthy stuff. Because at the time it was a learning curve, right? Like we knew what we were doing, but at the same time we were definitely like dirty bulk and just grow. And then when it was contest prep, it was like this idea of like counting calories and, trying to eat this, but don't eat that. So I think from an early age, I've always had a level of discipline that may be higher than some in terms of, I came from a single mom raising me and my 2 sisters, and just having this chores every day, and just kind of, I was always kind of not OCD, but the sense of like I was very organized. And so I think some of those traits really kind of pulled into this lifestyle of being disciplined and kind of having routine and structure. But the big thing, it was just trial and error, and just understanding that, hey, like I had this goal and I wanted to, really set myself out to succeed in it. And so I had the support, the community around me, but it was challenging just being in college and not having, not going to dollar night drinks, and not having going out and just trying to manage like a college budget, because at the time we were struggling. I was being a bartender, I was serving at a restaurant.
Yeah, no one's really balling in college. I don't feel like so.
Not at all.
Being broke's just kind of like the norm.
Yeah.
Which I didn't mind, honestly, at that time. I thought it was cool. But eating healthy foods too, because obviously eating clean is a lot more expensive than eating healthy. Like I feel like my grocery bill is always substantially more just because, but just kind of the name of the game with that.
Absolutely.
With your first show, you're like a 21-year-old kid. Like you did 6 months of prep. Was there any fear around that? Like stage fright, like just getting on stage for the first time and kind of doing that whole thing, or not really?
I was terrified, to be honest, because I'm not I think I've cultivated over the years being comfortable talking and being comfortable like who I am, and just I think as you naturally become confident in who you are, you become just more confident in general in life and how you approach situations. But at that time, I was still in the early stages of figuring out who I was. It's college. You still are figuring out what you want to do with your life. And so for me, the idea of getting on stage, showcasing my body, and like just doing this it's a whole other world. And it's so funny because I've done it since 2012. even like today, having my clients go for the first time or their family come for the first time, and their eyes are just big, bug-eyed, like, what is all of this? So for me, yeah, the first time I did it without a coach, I worked by myself. I had no idea what to expect. And so definitely nerve-wracking. I remember my birthday is May 31st, and the show, I believe, was June 2nd. So it was my 21st birthday, and I just remember my family very, very novice, very new to what this meant. Because they're like, so do you want to go to grab Mexican food the night before? I was like, no, I can't. They're like, do you want to do a shot? I was like, no, I can't.
Well, I would love to do both those things.
Yeah, no, I was like,
sounds pretty good.
I was like, yeah, it was. So actually, so it was definitely nerve-wracking. And the show day was, that was an experience in itself. Just like, it was such a new world. And like, yeah, it was amazing in the best way possible, because I actually had a great turnout. I actually won the show, won the overall, and I had no idea what that even meant at the time. But it was a fun day. It was a fun weekend because, with these shows, you have to get tanned, right? And like,
yeah, bronzed up,
real bronzed up. And normally you like for these shows, you like pay the tanning company for the promotion. They tan you there. I used a buddy, and like I don't know if you've ever seen the YouTube like Chocolate Rain, but I was just like dark. I was like really dark. And I remember it was the night before, and I had to go to the grocery store, and I just remember like walking like just paint, like darker than I've ever been at any other show, just walking at the grocery store and just like getting food, and people just like looking at me. I remember getting gas one time, or gas the day before, and I was filling up the gas tank, and I was looking through my rearview mirror, and there was a group of girls doing the same, and they were just like talking, looking, and laughing, and like wondering like, what is this guy? What's wrong with this guy?
Yeah, got a bad bronze job.
Yeah, it was intense, but it was a great show.
That's hilarious. Well, that's a good, I guess, way to face your fears early on, like stage presence, talking on stage, doing anything on stage. Really, it's like, I feel like that's a really good barrier for fear, because after you do it, you realize like it's not as scary as you thought it was. So that's really cool. And then the eating part is really cool too, just like being very, very disciplined in that. At the same time, you were pursuing your bachelor's of science at the University of Kansas, and you were initially planning to be a pre-med student.
Yeah. So the initial game plan was just to go pre-med, and I wanted to be a doctor. I was thinking like pediatrics. I love kids. I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go with the pre-med route. I just knew I was always in love with the human body, helping people, and just the idea of like challenging myself, because to be honest, no one in my family went to traditional college and did the whole, get their bachelor's degree or like a bachelor, like a graduate program.
Yeah.
So it challenged me in the sense that I wanted to do something that none of my family has ever done before.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That was going to be my next question for you. Where does that like level of self-belief come from, like early on? Do you feel like it was because you saw what, not wrong, like wrong for you? Did you see like, I didn't want this. Like, they didn't go to college. I didn't want this. They didn't kind of do some of these things, and I want better for myself. Did it kind of set the bar for you early in thinking about it like that?
Yeah, I would say both, kind of yes and no in both ways. So my mom, until I was 12, she remarried, and I have an amazing stepfather. She raised me and my two sisters, and she was a travel agent, so she went to a trade school, and I just saw her grind. Really, we were never fortunate enough to have she always gave us a great life, but in terms of financial, we were, on the bottom end. And so for me, it was one of those things, like, I didn't want to be in that position for the rest of my life. So it challenged me not only financially to, be in a position to where I have that financial freedom, but I also wanted to do something I was passionate about, something that helped other people. And that's something that, gave me a clear path to success.
That's amazing. I love that. I think one thing a lot of people listening are wondering, like, hey, what if I'm in a place where I don't know what my passion is in life? Like, I don't know what that path should look like. Like, I know I'm not happy where I'm at. Like, things are not good right now, but there's something more for me. Like, if you could go back and look at that thing, what would you tell somebody who's looking to get on a better path, whether that's fitness or not?
Yeah, I think that's going to be somewhat individualized to them, but I think from just kind of a general outlook, what I would say, and I think it was Mark Cuban who said this, focus on your passions, but also focus on your efforts. Like, where are you putting your effort into life? And that is going to allow you to exceed, because honestly, wherever you are willing to invest, because a lot of people are passionate about things, right? But if they're not passionate enough to put the work in, then that passion kind of dies there. So I'm a big believer in kind of, focusing on what drives you, what motivates you, and something that's bigger than you, but also something that you see yourself going all in. Because if you truly want to elevate your life, you're going to have to do things even when you don't want to do them.
Dude, you said something, I think maybe it was in a post I read of yours like a month or two ago, and it was something in the regards of balance and like how society is focused on balance. And you said sometimes life has to be unbalanced, right, and you need to like be okay with that.
Yeah.
I think like for fitness, do you feel like when you're doing these shows and you're doing these things, like that's like your all in mindset, like everything else just kind of goes by the wayside and like, this is my primary focus?
Yeah. I think in general, you know, the idea of what is balance is hard to answer anyways. Everyone has their different definitions of balance, but I think in general, when it comes to being passionate about something or want something that maybe other people don't have, you can't be balanced. You have to go all in. You have to be able to prioritize and, you know, kind of have this unhealthy, in a sense, like attack to it, right? You have to, yes, you want to make sure you're managing other aspects of your life and making sure not your entire life is going to, you know, shit, for lack of a better term. You definitely want to push forward, but you have to have that sense of, I'm going to commit myself all in. And, you know, it's not always going to be like this, but for right now, I have to grow and I have to get to a position to where it can be self-sustaining or where I do achieve my goal. And then I'll reallocate that focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree with you. I think like the word is like obsession. Like I think people use the word obsession as a bad term a lot, but obsession I don't think is a really terrible thing. So I think obsession is a good way to describe it. And then, I mean, at that time you were kind of like doing the pre-med thing and then you were kind of like doing the competitive thing. And then you were at a crossroads in your life where you graduated with your bachelor's and you had a change of plan. Let's talk about like your mindset in that time. You graduated, you weren't all in on the idea of being a doctor anymore. And you kind of had this idea that you wanted to be something different with training and more focused on like the body composition, helping people that way.
Right.
Can you walk me through like kind of where you were at, like after you graduated?
Yeah. It was definitely a huge pivotal moment in my life. Obviously going from, you know, spending 5 years in college to attain a degree to, you know, be a catalyst to put me into a position to where I can go pre-med. I think my interest and overall passion, as we talk about, shifted a little bit from more like general health and like what I initially thought I wanted to do. Because again, I went into college not knowing 100%. I just knew that this was the area I wanted to pursue. And then as I started competing, as I started continuing to lift, as I started to see that there was actually a path of opportunity for that to be something I could actually turn into not only a passion, but actually, you know, a profession. I wanted to take the chance, and I'm fortunate enough to have an amazing family who really have always instilled the belief of, you know, do what you feel like you're meant to do ultimately. And I felt as I got older, I was less inclined to feel like, oh, I needed to be, you know, working at an office and being a doctor, more so to doing something that I think the biggest belief was I wanted to do something that almost was was more preventative opposed to just like fixing something afterwards, you know? I wanted to teach people how to take care of their body to prevent getting sick, prevent getting ill, preventing weak. And I think that passion changed and I felt that there was an opportunity to pursue it.
I love that, dude. And I agree 100%. Like medicine in America, it can be a great thing and it obviously helps people, but I don't think it's talked about enough. Like, what if we got enough sleep? What if we drank enough water? What if we exercised? Like, what if we did the things like, like if I have a car and I'm running it hard for 60,000 miles and I don't get an oil change, it's probably not going to perform the best. So I should probably be changing the oil
it's just kind of like hacking at the root, not the leaves of the issues that, you know, trying to not the symptoms, but the causes. Like, how can we prevent these things? And I still don't think to this day we talk about it enough, or it's, you know, mainstream enough of, hey, there's a lot of things you have power to do to prevent things, opposed to just waiting until, or feeling like it's your, you know, destiny to have X, Y, and Z. Like, there's a lot you can do and a lot of power you have in yourself with your habits in your daily life that you can prevent a lot of these issues.
Love that. The power's inside. Mm-hmm. That's cool. And I'm glad that you said that your parents are very supportive of you and like just taking the year off and like not having to be in an office. Was that like a humbling year for you at all? Like when you went back to live with your parents, did you feel like, am I making the right choice? Like, I'm living with my parents now, I'm not going to be a doctor. Like, was there any fear associated around making that change and just kind of like taking a step back to do that?
Yeah, there was a sense of like, am I making the right decision? Am I a failure for, going back to living with my family, living with my parents? Like, did I feel less confident as a man? Like, okay, I graduated, I, spent all this money in college, and now I'm going back to my, parents' house to live with them to pursue something that could absolutely just crash and burn or just like waste a year of my life. And, so there was a sense of that, but fortunately, like I said, and I understand that not everyone has this. I had the opportunity, and I had an amazing support system from my parents to really challenge me to look bigger and really do something with my life that, was going to fulfill me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, dude, that's incredible. I think that's amazing. My dad was a farmer growing up, so I kind of saw that too. Like just like building a farm, just kind of like building something with your hands and like what is possible. So I think it's good to have, whether it's like a parent or like a mentor, just somebody to kind of guide you and show you like what right looks like. What was the most difficult part about starting the business? Like other than being home and taking that step back, like mentally, what was the most challenging part for you? Was it like generating clients? Was it like figuring out like your value proposition? What did you struggle with the most starting out?
Yeah, so I think the biggest area I struggled out, and it sounds, maybe it's just basic, but it just what to do, like what to do with my time, because I did work. I was a bank teller for a little bit. I was a server at a Mexican restaurant, but there's a lot of like time, and so it's a lot of self-motivation. And I don't struggle with being motivated, but I'm not a natural born leader. And so like I'm a great follower. Like you tell me what to do, I'll be the hardest worker there. But when you're your own boss and there's not like this blueprint of, okay, this is what you need to be doing each day and or enough to do to fulfill an 8-hour day. Like I remember vividly every day I would be passionate enough and motivated enough to wake up. I'd put on a nice outfit and I'd go to Starbucks, because for me, I didn't want to just be someone who's living at my parents' house and work for an hour or two and then watch TV. And, I wanted to have the discipline. So I put myself in that position to, be in the environment to work. But I'd be there and be like, okay, so I only have, a handful of clients. I only had 2 or 3 clients. Like, what they're taken care of for the week. What do I do? And so it's just a lot of kind of, trying to stumble forward and not really stagnate too much on like trying to figure out my daily task.
You also had to take a step back, and I shouldn't say take a step back here. This is just like what you had to do. You talked about the training aspect and like having to train people simultaneously. And you said you did that for 5 years back and forth?
Yeah, that's correct. So I agree with you. It definitely, I don't put myself above a personal trainer or anyone like that. I think if to each their own of what they can scale their business and grow their business. But for me, personal training was kind of the natural step, because I was like, okay, that's going to teach me. I always view things like, what do I gain out of this? And for me, having that ability to communicate with individuals for 30 to an hour, learning different types of personality types, learning what motivates people, and then also having that ability to understand the nutrition and the training aspect, I felt was only going to benefit me. But yeah, at the end of the day, it was what kept me financially alive.
Mm-hmm. And your parents said that you were going to give you a year to do that. And then after the year, they were like, you're on your own after that. You get 1 year to build this or either go back to school.
Yeah, basically they said, hey, we're going to give you this year to live with us, essentially rent-free. I still paid a little bit, but essentially rent-free to figure your stuff out, because we want you. They always, like I said, they always want me to think bigger. And so I always try to think big, and so I was like, okay, I want to do this. This was like, early 2013, 2014. So social media was kind of getting newer. It was newer. Instagram was newer. So I was like, I can maybe leverage that and kind of grow that. And I did a little bit, but ultimately I was just, entrepreneurial minded. And I was just like, okay, I have 1 year. And so there was pressure on me, because I was like, I didn't want to disappoint them. I didn't want to disappoint myself. And I definitely, at that point, I was just burnt out of school. And I was just like, I do not want to go back to school for something that I'm just not really that passionate about anymore.
Yeah, that's tough, because, after your bachelor's, then you've got like the master's and you've got the doctorate, the residency, and like that, there's a whole bunch after that. And if you're committing to that, like you're committing to a lot of student loans and like just
a lot.
You better be doing it at that point.
And my parents helped me a little bit. I don't want to say they didn't help me at all. They definitely helped me a little bit with college, but I had the large bulk of all my student loans. And so, I already had, $30,000-$40,000 in debt. I was like, okay, now do the math of grad school. I'm going to be in hundreds of thousands. It intimidated me. It scared me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Andy Frisella talks about this a lot on his show. He talks about the value of like seeing things through. Like if you're going to do something, like see it through. And he talks about like his message of, I did this for 10 years before it was ever anything. I slept on a couch. Like I made $60,000 my first 10 years, like, which is still crazy to me. Like, I don't know if I would have been able to do that. Like for 10 years, that's a whole nother level. But was it ever hard for you to see the path? Like it was growing and you were growing clients and you were kind of doing both. But like, did you ever get to a point where you were like, is this really working? Like, is it really scaling the way that I need it to be?
Yeah, a lot. I think it's very, very natural for anyone who's starting a business to have self-doubt. Like, it's one thing to have self-doubt and then one thing to give up, right? You can absolutely have faith in yourself and believe it through, but there's going to be times, no matter what, if you look at the logistics of your finances or just how you're trending, that, okay, yeah, this might not work out. And so I think in terms of having those moments, the first couple of years were really, really slow for me. I've been fortunate pretty much every year to grow in my business, and that still continues to be this day. But for the longest time, there was this fear of, okay, well, things are not going to always be like this, or what if I just can't afford my bills? And, with personal training, it was great, but it wasn't my passion. I loved working with people, but I love the nutrition aspect, because for me, it was like personal training. I trained with a person once, twice a week. They'd go eat whatever, and then they'd come back and I never see results. And so for me, I wanted to have more of an impact. But then things like with the holidays and stuff, it would ebb and flow. So I would really struggle like during certain periods of the year to really be financially okay.
Well, I'm glad that you stuck through with it. And obviously you've been successful in that. And like, it's one roadblock to quit college and kind of give up on that thing. It's like another roadblock to start a business. It's another thing to like have to train during that business. These are all like things that you've had to progress through. I think that the most important part of today's message is like what you've gone through, and that's overcoming cancer. And in 2016, just being hit with some news, as devastating as that. I know I told you my mom had gotten cancer, and I remember the day that she told me that it had happened, and I just felt like time, it wasn't even happening to me, and I just felt like time was standing still. I remember just like laying on the ground like for 2 hours. I just like laid there because I just didn't even really know like that it exists, but like until it like really affects you, it's like, what really is that? And then all of a sudden it happens. I just want to talk about like, one, what was the thing that made you get checked out? Like, when did you realize like, oh, I need to get checked out, there's something wrong? And two, how did you feel in that moment when you were delivered that news?
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there, but yeah, I mean, cancer in general it's something that like I think all of us can relate to, but some of us can really relate to, right? Like we all know someone who has had cancer or has it or has gone through it, but when it's someone close to you or when it's yourself, it's a lot to process. So yeah, as far as finding out, it was one of those things where I was just laying in bed. And to be honest, I was just feeling around, I was just like noticing on my left side, my left testicle. So I had testicular cancer. So on my left side, I noticed that side was smaller, but I also noticed there was kind of like this irregularity and like a bump. And I was just like, I didn't know what it was. It felt like kind of like a bag of rocks is the best way I could express it, because I don't know. But I felt it and I wasn't sure what it was. I kind of ignored it for a little bit, to be honest, which I don't recommend doing. I ignored it for a couple weeks, and I noticed it, and then really I was like, man, I kind of wanted to really see what my testosterone was. That's honestly what brought me to my physician, because I was like, I felt like I had low testosterone. I was in a relationship at the time, and I could tell, right? And so I went there, and beforehand I was doing some research on like what it could be, and there was things like hydrocele and just different kind of like fluid-filled sacs and whatnot, nothing that was actually dangerous. Mm-hmm. So I went to the physician, and she felt around, and she wasn't concerned. She was just like, I think it's a hydrocele. I'm not really concerned, but just to be safe, let's do an ultrasound. And so we scheduled an ultrasound on a Friday, and I remember it was basically August 16th, I believe, of 2016, and it was like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They went, they did their screening for it, and they go, okay, well, we will let you know results, or your doctor will get a hold of you probably in like 4 or 5 days, because we wanted to start there. And I remember saying, okay. So it was like 1 o'clock. I go home, get ready for the gym, And I go to the workout at like 4 or 5 o'clock. It's busy. It's downtown Kansas City. It's packed. I'm working out, pre-workout flowing, like mid-chest pump, feeling pretty good.
Yeah, you're in the thick of it.
I'm feeling pretty good. I get a phone call, and I didn't know the number, so I just kind of I was in the middle of a workout, so I just ignored it.
Priorities.
Yeah, because they were the pump. And then I get a voice message, and so I listen to the voice message, and basically it was like, "Hey, Justin, this is your doctor. I need you to give me a call back as soon as possible, please. I need to discuss something." And so I was like, "Okay." So, pre-workout flowing, I'm kind of nervous, anxiety.
Oh, my God.
Kick-started. And so I go into one of, like, the studio rooms, the quiet rooms, and I call, and she was basically saying, "Hey, just want to let you know that we found something on the ultrasound, and we have to assume it's worst case scenario until we can get you in." I go, what is worst case scenario? And she goes, "It could be cancer." And I was like, whoa, like, you don't know, because I'm a healthy individual. I thought I was a healthy individual. I took care of my body. I trained every day. I ate right. I was like, why would that happen to me? So it was a lot. And so I was like, okay. And she goes, "Unfortunately, it's Friday, and I can't get you in until probably Monday or Tuesday," which was terrible, because then you have the whole weekend to kind of just sit in your thoughts and not know anything. And so that's how the conversation left on Friday, was basically, "Hey, we have to assume worst case scenario. We're going to be able to try to get you in on Monday or Tuesday, but until then, just hang tight."
You just had to sit there all weekend assuming that you had cancer.
Trying to avoid Google. Trying to be like, what am I going to die? Like, I didn't know what was going to happen. My family have had cancer in the past, like from smoking and whatnot. And obviously I've seen how that affects people, but I'm like, I didn't know anything about cancer at the time on like what I had.
Dude, that is literally the worst thing in the world. One, you had pre-workout flowing, so I'm like already pumping, and then all of a sudden it's going from like the good flow to the panic. I know what that's like.
Yes.
And then two, like all weekend, I'm like, oh my God, dude, that'd be terrible. I'm so sorry.
I will make a note that I did finish my workout. I did finish the workout.
I went back.
I went back, and yeah. But no, I remember going home and then kind of, I mistakenly called my mom on the phone, and she was driving, and I told her that, and she started crying. So don't ever do that to your mom. Don't ever call on the phone, especially when they're driving. But yeah, so that was just a really rough weekend of kind of feeling, because I think with anything, most people can relate, the unknowing is generally the worst. Like when you don't know what to expect or what's going on, the ideas you create in your head or the reality you paint is way generally worse than the reality of what actually has to happen. So yeah, I found that news out, and we got an appointment with a urologist on Monday, and went in, and I was with my mom and my girlfriend at the time and my dad, and she pulled me into the office, had looked over everything, and then she basically said, "Yeah, so we're going to just assume it's cancer, and we're going to have to biopsy it, but we can't just biopsy it. We actually have to remove it." And I was just like, she said it so nonchalantly. I'll never forget that. Like, she said it so casually, and I was just always remember up thinking, like, how do you just tell someone that they have cancer so casually? And so it was really overwhelming, because with having cancer, with having testicular cancer, they can't just biopsy the tumor. They have to fully remove it. So it was just kind of, life went quick at that point, because there was just the steps basically of having that appointment to then having to wait a couple weeks to schedule for the surgery, and then having to wait for the biopsy results, which took another 2 weeks. And so there's just so much waiting. There was so much in my head, which was really challenging, to getting the news that it indeed was cancerous. It wasn't, it had spread a little bit. So with testicular cancers, there's different types, and they base it on like the level of, progression, how much it has metastasized. And so for me, once I did the tumor, or once they biopsied the tumor, they found out that I had what's called type 1 non-seminoma testicular cancer. And it's like type 1B. So basically all that really meant for me was that the cancer had spread a little bit outside of the tumor. And so with testicular cancer, it has kind of a general path that goes from the tumor to like the capillaries to like your abdomen to like your chest to like your brain. And so like obviously you don't want it to be at that point. For 1B, basically what it said was it got past the tumor into the vesicles that took to my lymph nodes, but there wasn't anything big enough in the lymph nodes to show that it reached there. So it was like good and bad, right?
So basically what you're saying is like it could spread very quickly from your testicles to your body. So like they need to remove the tumor
right
before it can, I can't say that word, but
yeah,
but spread through your whole body. So they're like, we gotta do this really quickly.
Yeah.
Otherwise it could spread. And then like thinking about why she probably said that to you so calmly, she probably said it so much, one, that she's used to it, and two, like if she freaked out, like you'd probably be freaking out.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, 100% understand, but it was just so like, it was just
foreign.
So removed from like emotion. It was crazy, but I get like as a doctor, you have to be like that, and she sees this literally every day. But yeah, so as far as mine, it had spread outside of the tumor into like the capillaries that go to my lymph nodes, but my lymph nodes were not swollen, so there was nothing that popped up. And so basically when we had the conversation of, okay, what is the next step? I was given two options: surveillance, which is basically just you do nothing, but you monitor everything.
Mm-hmm.
The issue with that is you have about a 50% chance of it continuing to spread. I was like, well, that's not a good percentage. That's pretty high. Or be aggressive and begin and do chemotherapy. And that's the route that I took.
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, that's just heavy news to get and to kind of process. And like you said, the waiting game, I can't imagine just like waiting. Like we'll get into the weightlifting kind of during chemo, but before we do, like when you had gotten that news, did it kind of pause everything? Did it pause the training? Did it pause like everything? Did it just kind of like put your whole world on pause for a period of time?
It definitely put my world on pause, but see, it was weird because, so I got that news in 2016 in August. Well, April of 2016, I had just got done competing in my very first natural bodybuilding show. I won. I just went pro. I was kind of at the highest peak of like, what I do with competing.
You just gotten your pro card?
Just got my pro card as a natural bodybuilder.
Dope.
And so I was super excited about it. Like I don't want to say like the best condition of my life, because I don't think that's like considered the healthiest position of my life, because you're super lean, but I, achieved something that I never did, a physical spec, I guess, if you will. And then so just a couple months later to kind of go from that to, hey, you got something that's trying to kill you inside of you. It's like, it's terrifying, it's the highest of high to kind of the lowest of low. And so, yeah, the biggest thing for me was just, there was a lot of unknowing from August 16th, finding out to, waiting pretty much until October for us to actually take action, So there was a lot of like, trying not to live in this limbo state, but feeling kind of helpless.
Yeah, trying not to feel, I think helpless is a good word for it. Just like not feel like total crap about yourself and kind of like start to ruminate in negative thoughts and things like that. So you went through the testicular removal, and then from that period, you said there was like a few week point where you couldn't do anything. And then you said after that point, when you were going through chemo, you could lift through chemo. I love this part of the story because I think it's so incredible that you did this. And I think it's like a testament to, like you said, your discipline, thinking bigger. And I think that God honestly prepared you for that moment through your parents and through the things that you went through. I guess first question, how important was God for you in that time going through that?
I've always been like really close to God in my life, and I think there's ebbs and flows, and a lot of people can relate to that. Maybe like through college, I was a little lower, close. I wasn't as close, and then I think after college, I got really close to Him, especially as I kind of leaned into Him more with trying to figuring out my purpose and figure out what I wanted out of my life, and kind of trusting in Him to like guide me for my business. So God has always been a big influence in my life, and something that I've always, with faith, have held closely, and I'm really happy to say, like, right now I'm closer than ever probably too. But, to kind of go back, when I got diagnosed in September. I had my removal basically at the beginning of September. And then I had to have another surgery to get a port put into my chest, which is basically where they would inject the chemo drugs into me. And it was just an easier way to do that. So there was a time period from basically from August to like the beginning of October where I wasn't able to train a lot. And so I think that really tested my faith a lot, just because not only was I not able to do the one thing that I loved, but I was battling my own fears of wondering what if and what's going to happen when all this goes, when this happens. Because there was a lot of waiting, because there was the removal, and then I had to wait a couple weeks for the biopsy. But once we got into chemo, so the conversation with my doctor was to have chemotherapy, and that started the beginning of October. And my chemo, basically how it looked, there was multiple rounds of chemo, and each cycle consisted of 3 weeks. And the first week, I would basically be at the hospital Monday through Friday from about 7 a.m. to about 4:30, just straight, getting chemo drugs for the entire time. And then the second week I'd be in for about a day or two. And the third week was just kind of a week where I didn't have to go. But actually that was like the worst weeks, because that's when your body just starts really shutting down. But as far as the working out for me has always been something that's for me, right? I think most people can relate why they work out. Some people do it just to be healthy. Some people do it as kind of an escape. Some people do it as like stress reliever, whatever it might be. For me, it was kind of the singularity thing that defined me that brought my life to where it was, like in a position for personal, but also for professional, and also just confidence. So I really fully embraced it. So when it came to not being able to work out, it was really challenging for me. It was really like, I was afraid. I was like, I worked so hard to create the physique I did that I was afraid of what cancer could have done to me in terms of, yeah, you're gonna lose your hair, you're gonna lose your eyebrows, but you're also gonna lose your body, and I didn't want to be weak. I think that was a big theme of my life, is feeling weak. And I think weightlifting and what I was able to accomplish in my life brought me strength. And I think there was a value of like fearing that I was going to lose that strength because cancer was going to take that away from me. And so when chemo really started, I made a commitment to myself that I didn't want to be weak, and I was going to do what I could to have that normalcy in my life maintain. So I would still go to the gym every day, even after chemo. It was kind of an ongoing joke with all the nurses, because I would be there from 7 to 4, and they'd be like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm going to go do chest. They're like, where are you going? I'm like, going to the gym. They're like, you going right now? I was like, yep. So for me, it was go to chemo from 7 to 4, and then go from the gym from 4 to 6, and then go home and rest and do what I needed to do to get ready for the next day.
That's awesome. That's gonna be a clip for sure. What you said in there, I was listening, I was mesmerized. Like that's incredible. That's exactly what I wanted to get out of this interview, and that's good, dude. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like, you have something that's kind of the staple in your life, and it's something that like defines you, and you're scared. Like, I'm gonna lose that now. I don't want to lose something that is so close to me. And I definitely feel that way about the gym too. Like, if I can't go and I'm not allowed to go, like what do you really have type deal? And you start questioning all of that. But it's good to know that like you leaned on God and like your faith was there in that time when you weren't feeling as strong yourself, and kind of carried you through the storm. And I think the good message for other people is like, have a couple of things that you can rely on. So like if one thing isn't going so well, like you've got something else to carry you through, because there are going to be storms in life, and like it's just bound to happen. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big believer in something that I took away from just cancer in general, and kind of what I tried to showcase, because I was actually pretty open about my journey. Like, I kept I wanted to keep a log. It wasn't for feel bad for me. It was more so, hey, look, I can overcome this, so can you, because obviously cancer is relatable to a lot of people. So I actually documented most of my journey on social media and just kind of in life. And I think the biggest theme that I always would come back to and say is like, you don't have to be defined by your circumstances. You could choose to be defined how you react. And I was a big believer in that. And so I always wanted to show that, yeah, there was tough days, there was tough times, and like, chemo sucks. It kicks your ass sometimes, but you don't have to have it completely take away the normalcy of your life. Like, there's certain things that ground you in life, and like that was something for me that I wanted to always be grounded by.
That's awesome. And then obviously you got the news one day that it was done. Chemo was done. You were cancer free. Was it considered being in remission, or just fully? Yeah.
So for the longest time, you're basically in remission. So I went through a handful of months of chemo, and then it was kind of weird because like I was done, and I was like, well, am I done? Because like they're like, this is your last day of chemo. I got to ring the bell. I got to celebrate. It was really cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing in a lot of ways. But then there was still kind of like, it was like amazing, but you still had that lingering feeling, because I needed to hear it from my doctor that I was cancer free, and it wasn't this immediate thing. I actually had to wait I think it was like 2 weeks after my last chemo to get in with my doctor. So I was like happy, but I was like, can I be happy? Like, was I done? Like, just because like the protocols were done, I still had to do the blood work and everything. I was like, am I done? And so, yeah, it was, once he finally said the words, it was just, you felt the relief come off. You know, it was great.
Too much waiting in the medical field. That's what I'm hearing.
There's a lot of waiting, and it's just like, it's terrible because it's just like your life, and you're just like, you want to hear just tell me, you know?
Well, dude, I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're cancer free. And I mean, that's an incredible story. We've touched on a ton of things here. And I mean, on the backside of cancer now, you're obviously here in Scottsdale. You just moved to Arizona. So that's new for you.
Yeah.
So you're experiencing that. I mean, you're a first Phorm athlete, so you get to be a part of that. I guess like environment, that culture. You've got your IFBB Pro card, and you're continuing to do shows. What in your life has made you most proud when you look back on all those things that you've gone through? Like, what moment has made you most proud, just in terms of overcoming it?
Yeah, it's tough to say because I feel like they all tie into each other. I think while I'm super proud of, you know, beating cancer and handling it the way I did, and, you know, moving to Scottsdale has been amazing, and like, you know, I've never moved away from my family, so that's amazing. I would say honestly, achieving the IFBB Pro card was and is probably the biggest impressive feat to me, just because it signifies everything I believe and stand for, is just not giving up. I started competing in 2012, and I didn't win it until 2020. Numerous shows, you know, 15 shows later, many times I got close, and just like the amount that you invest in each prep, and for it to like get close but not to happen. So I think just the accumulation of like what that signifies to me, and like having the tenacity and grit to not give up, and to like believe in myself enough to like not listen to what judges say or they don't say, and just continue to challenge myself to rise to that occasion. I'd probably say that, just because what it signifies. The card and the competing is great, but what it shows me, what I've been able to do, is really
what it means to you. It's the representation of your hard work and everything that you stand for.
Right. 100%.
What fuels you today? Like looking back on all those things, those are great, and like that's all part of your story. Like, what does fulfillment look like for you now, and like what fuels you to be better today?
Yeah, I think when you go through things like that in life, it puts life into perspective in a whole different way from, you know, when you're battling something that's like actually trying to kill you or like risking your life. I think you view life differently, and you really appreciate the time that you have and just the people that you have. And I think that fulfillment is like, I want to genuinely have an impact on those that I, you know, am engaged with. So my clients, my family, my loved ones, my friends, like, so my fulfillment is just, you know, being the best version of myself, because I want to hold myself to that standard so I can give those around me a better life.
Fill others from a full cup, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's legit, bro. This has been amazing. This has been such a good story. I'm excited to share this with people. This is the Weekly Intention. I always like to leave people with one thing. I mean, there's been a ton of great things that we've talked about, but, you know, thinking about all the things that you've overcome and all the dark places and all the tough times that you've had in your life, what would you say to somebody that is in that dark spot right now, that doesn't have a clear sense of purpose, that just is just in kind of a dark place, and they want more, and they're not really sure how to move forward? What would you say to that person who was, you know, you in a lot of senses in your life?
Yeah. That's tough because I feel like everyone's different, but at the end of the day, I would
It is
say,
tough.
yeah, no, I mean, I would say what I would say is, whether you have like the real thing or not, we all have a sense of cancer in us, something that's trying to kill us, something that's trying to eat at us, something that's trying to hold us down. And it's really going to be you who's going to push you past that. And even if you're in the darkest time of your life, you have to view that as an opportunity, not an obstacle, an opportunity to rise above it and to create something for yourself and become the person that you want to be. Because that's going to give you the opportunity to look back and say, holy shit, I overcame that. I became who I wanted to be. I didn't let that stop me. And that's the best opportunity for you to really have the most fulfilling life.
Boom. That's incredible. Thank you, dude. I appreciate you coming on the show. I was really excited that we got to set this up. I think this is going to help a ton of people. As always, like, share, subscribe. We're trying to get this out to people, trying to get this in front of people. This has been one that I've really, really enjoyed. I love talking to people who overcome things like this. It's honestly such a fun thing to do. I love doing this. So spread the word. And until next time, this is Michael and Justin with the Weekly Intention.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Take care, buddy. Take care, everybody.